So very much. Thank you. Welcome to everyone that's joining us today. So glad to be here with everyone. I am a proud member of the Society for Diversity, and I have my CDE certification that I proudly show all the time, LinkedIn, everything, business cards all over the place. Just so happy to be a part of this organization and uplifting it and everything that it does. When I was thinking about this session today, the thing that really jumped out at me as a former chief diversity officer and head of HR at a TV station, and now I'm an executive recruiter for Stanton Chase. But the thing that really made me think and pause is, as DEI professionals in today's landscape, are we taking care of ourselves? Are we making sure we are stopping to give ourselves coaching that we may need? We're out here fighting the good fight, making sure we're in inclusive organizations, making sure there's equity. But are we stopping to pause to make sure we're taking care of ourselves? And that really, really weighed heavily on my mind. And I told Amber, I said, this is what I want to talk about today. And I don't want to talk about it by myself. I want to talk about it with two great people that I know that I've used before, who are great, wonderful coaches, executive coaches, and coaches in and of itself that are diverse people as well, and have them be my guests so I could talk to them, ask them some questions, and have them tell you about what they do, how they do it, why it's important to do it, but also make sure we're going to ask you all some questions. You can join in the chat as well to make sure you all are engaged in this conversation. So the first thing that I'm going to do is introduce them. So my first panelist is Sharon Dean. She's an accomplished leadership coach, human capital consultant, and educator. Sharon's ability to gain the respect of leaders and partners with them in furtherance of their goals is essential to her success as a human capital expert and leadership coach. Sharon's experience has led to a wide range of demonstrable skills that include critical evaluation, relationship management, strategic planning, talent acquisition, and leadership development. Sharon possesses a Master's of Science degree in organizational management and is a graduate of Georgetown University Certified Coaching Program. She's earned the ACC designation from the International Coaching Federation and is a certified MBTI facilitator, and holds a certification from SHRM CP, the Society of Human Resource Management. I have to make sure I give people their flowers and have to tell you about all the wonderful things she has. So let me talk to you about my other panelists here, Ronald Johnson. And I have to read from my screen because Iris can't memorize all of this. So Ronald Johnson, he, him, his, is an esteemed consultant, nonprofit leader, coach, researcher, and facilitator trainer with an impressive 18-year track record of empowering individuals and organizations across diverse sectors. His unwavering commitment lies in fostering inclusion and equitable environments, driving positive change, and inspiring impactful transformation. Ronald's academic qualifications complement his wealth of practical experience. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from Marshall University, a testament to his comprehensive human understanding of human behavior and organizational dynamics. Additionally, he's earned a Master's of Arts degree in psychology from the esteemed Chicago School of Professional Psychology, further solidifying his expertise in driving impactful change within individuals and organizations. So everybody, if you can give a little thumbs up, shout out, tweet in the chat, some emojis. Got some great people I'm going to be talking with here today that I've known and have recommended in many of my organizations for them to come and do executive coaching for different managers all the way up to senior leaders. So I've worked with these people before, so it's not new people that I know. So welcome, Sharon, welcome, Ronald, and I can't wait to dive into the questions. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to ask everybody who's on with us today, please put in the chat, have you ever engaged with an executive coach? Have you ever done it? Yes, no, and if no, why not? So if you can go ahead and do that, I'm going to jump in, and Amber's going to be helping me too to make sure we're taking care of any questions and comments that come in the chat, because I'm going to go ahead and start having this conversation with Sharon and Ronald today. So my first question, why is executive coaching so important for DEI professionals in your own words, because that's what I want to focus on today. I want to talk about us folks who are out here. And even in my space as an executive recruiter at Stanton Chase, I'm looking for people at high level roles, but we focus on diverse placements here at our office, in our DC office at the firm. So I'm gonna toss it to you first, Sharon, if you could talk a little bit about why is executive coaching important for DEI professionals? Talk to me.
Sure. So thank you, Iris, for that warm, elaborate bio rendition that you gave. And hello, Ronald. And hello to everyone out in the cyber in the virtual space. So to answer your question, why I think it's important, I think that having been in this space for several years now, that coaches also need coaches. And I can honestly say I have one. And so I utilize them because when you work in this space and we talk about self-care, self-care is not being selfish. Self-care is a radical act. And I encourage those that sit in the space of leaders, that sit in the DEI space that is truly evolving every single minute, every single second, whether you are designated as that DEI expert in your organization, or you just show up as a person that is of a diverse background, or you just want to work and make the organization that you work for, the people that you work with, to open their eyes, to increase their awareness, to invite more inclusion and equity into that space, it can be a heavy load to carry. And hence, there is always a need, I think, to have someone that you can go to and sit in that space with you, hold the space so you can have some time to think about it, process it, and help you move yourself forward. So, with that, I yield to you, Ronald.
Thank you. I will echo everything you said, and the analogy that I like to use is, as DEI practitioners, we are oftentimes in the driver's seat. And when you're in the driver's seat, you are focused on the road ahead. You can see some to your left and some to your right, but for the most part, you have to look forward. When you get a coach, the coach gets in the driver's seat and you get to now become a passenger. And just like a passenger in a car, you can do so many other things because your main focus isn't on driving the car. And so I always invite individuals that are doing this work, let me drive for a little bit, right? This work is exhausting. This work is tiring. It's heavy. And there comes a time where you have to be able to stop, gather, rejuvenate so that you can continue to do the work. One thing that I always say is there are blind spots. Even as a practitioner, even as a coach, there are blind spots. And until you bring someone else in that can help you identify those blind spots, similar to what Sharon said, it's about bringing awareness. You can't really get to the best version of yourself if you are not aware of those blind spots.
Great, great, great. We've had a bunch of people that have already started putting in the chat. We had some folks that have had coaches. We had Melissa said, yes, I love getting coached. We actually have someone who is Lacey, who's part of performance and leadership coach, Lacey Gateway. Thanks for putting that in there. So other people, if you're just joining with us, the first question was, have you ever had a coach? Yes, no, and if not, why, if you haven't? For me personally, I've always had a coach. I've had executive coaches. I've had mentors. I've had all the people to help me, support me doing the work that I've done previously in human resources and DEI. And specifically having an executive coach changed everything. I think both Sharon and Ronald mentioned having someone you can go to and let them drive, having someone you can go to and help you figure it out, look at it from a different perspective, help you with your fears, anxieties, issues when it comes to doing this work. This is important work. DEI work is very important. If you're doing it as a solo practitioner on your own or in an organization, it is a big job. It is a big role. I know a lot of folks that are still in this space and are doing it as consultants that are working for organizations doing it. It is who we are. It is part of this work of being a part of society of diversity. So thank you both for sharing the why this is so important to get this executive coaching. For folks who've shared in the chat, thank you so very much for putting that in there. And I'll be asking questions throughout in the chat for all the people who are attending here with us. So let me get back to these great panelists I have here today. Another question that I want you all to talk about. Now, Ronald, I'll let you start this time. So what happens in a typical executive coaching session? A lot of people might hear about it, and a lot of people think, oh, only presidents and executives have that at organizations. I know for me, I've gotten it for managers, for mid-level managers, all the way up to C-suite in organizations. And for myself, before I even became a VP, I had an executive coach. So Ronald, talk to us a little bit about what happens in a typical coaching session when you're working with someone.
Well, first we're having a conversation as to what is the current state of affairs. Like, where are you? Where are you the space that you're operating out of? And then concerns or areas of development. All right. I don't like to use the word weaknesses, but areas of development. And so once we have identified where we need to go, then that's when the process starts, right? And so we got to have a map. I refer to Dora the Explorer all the time. She always reminds her audience, where are we going? How will we get there, right? And so I'm reminding the coachee, this is where we are going to go. So by the end of this conversation, if we're not there, we're going to be on the road to getting there, right? And so having a conversation around the lay of the land, and then challenges and or helping them to find out or to be aware of their blind spots. How have they sought out feedback? What does feedback look like? What has their coaching experience looked like prior to this current moment? And then maybe some questions or pauses or hesitations that they may have that I can address before we get down into it, right? And I say the difference between a regular coaching session and an executive coaching session is, and the main goal of the conversation is to help you execute something, right? There's something that you haven't been able to hit the button on. And so how can I get the barriers out of the way and turn those into bridges? How can I get the roadblocks out of the way and turn them into railways so that we can, one, be further along than where we are, but also to figure out what resources that we need to take along this journey so that we can be the best version of ourselves.
Great, great. I love that you talk about that, the coaching and executive coaching. I love that you made the differentiation and how you go about doing it. So Sharon, I'm gonna throw it over to you because I've used you plenty of times at organizations to work with different people in our organization. And literally the outcomes, they've come back to me and they're just like, thank you. I needed that. I hear that a lot. I needed that. So talk to us about what happens in your typical executive coaching sessions, how you approach this.
So first, I want to give a nod to Ronald and say thank you for that new phrase, barriers and bridges. I love it. I'm going to say it. So it varies. It really depends on what brought the client to me. And it could look different. I had one executive come because he had a senior leader on his team that wasn't performing. And I was very clear on the onset that I don't do performance management coaching, meaning I'm not going to coach someone that you're looking to execute out of your organization and you're using me as a bridge to get there. And in this dynamic, I'll tell this short story. We had the senior leader, the president, was not a person of color, and they were managing a person of color. And so they had that dynamic. And so when I asked him, and it happened to be a him, when I asked him, well, what is it that you are looking to do? What do you want to be different at the end of this coaching session? So I typically always start with, what is it that you want to address? What is it that you want to change? Or what is it that you want to do differently? And he wanted to circle back to, well, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. I said, well, what makes you think that? And then I asked him, well, how many Black friends do you have?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Silence. So for me, part of it is moving this conversation forward is getting to the what. And for me, it's about coaching the person, not the problem. So he thought his problem was, I got this guy, he showed up, he was doing this, and this is a good guy. He was trying to fix it. Well, you can't fix a problem until you know what the problem is, and ask yourself, is the problem with you? So my coaching sessions can look different depending on what they're bringing to the table. And I'm asking them, similar to Ron, what do you want to have different at the end of each session has its purpose. And there's a bigger purpose because that's what you told me when you engaged me as the coach. So I want to ensure, to the extent that I can, that each individual session is on his, using Ron's word, is on the road to our end goal, our end destination. And sometimes we get there sooner than others. Sometimes it's difficult because we hit on that blind spot can be a pain spot. And so we have to work through that discomfort so that we can move the process forward. So I hope I answered your question.
Oh, that was good. That was really good. Someone put in the chat, every coach needs a coach. Even if you are a coach, you need a coach. And I really love that they put in the chat. Thanks so much, Sharon. And thanks for giving us that example, because I think that's very important when you're looking at using an executive coach, engaging with an executive coach for yourself. And especially, I keep saying this, as a DEI practitioner in the landscape of where we're living and working and interacting and engaging across organizations, people, industries, we have to stop and make sure we're getting our well filled back up as we're giving to others. And it is vital and important. Everybody that's on virtually with us, I want you to put in the chat, if you feel comfortable, what is one thing that you're really having an issue with? And you don't have to go into a lot of details. You could put, it could be engagement, it could be company culture, but put one thing that you're having an issue with right now that you just want to share with our two experts that are here today with me talking about this executive coaching. And we're going to make sure I'm going to go to that in a minute, but I'm going to just give everybody a few seconds to just put in one thing. It can be one or two, but one, if you want to, top of mind, that you're definitely dealing with and managing. And I'm going to be looking in the chat right now. And if you want to share, fine. If not, you don't have to. We had someone who shared confidence. We had someone who shared that. Trust, great. Unhinging from limited beliefs. Oh my God, Lacey, you are just talking my language right there. That is great. Thanks everybody that's throwing that out there. And I'm gonna have our two panelists to talk about these different topics you all are putting in here that you're handling and trying to manage as you're living every day in this space. High emotions and tensions on a DEI committee. Woo! Yeah. You all are just having some preaching going on today. I'm just putting it in that context, but I can relate to everything that everybody's putting in the chat right now. So I'm gonna switch my questions around a little bit, because the next question I'm gonna ask is gonna be relevant to what everybody's putting in here in the chat, these things, bridging the gap between nonprofit and industry terms and practices through a DEI lens. Thanks, Susan. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing you put in here. Everybody's putting some great stuff. So I'm gonna ask both of our panelists, with these things everybody's throwing in here, how do you help address these issues, some of these specific issues, and especially as these DEI practitioners, when you're in a coaching session? Let's take, for example, I'm gonna just take trust. If we want to do that, I'm gonna just choose that, just so we can have a concrete example to use from our participants that are here with us today. When we look at the kind of DEI issues we discuss during these coaching sessions, let's start with trust. How would you all address that? How would you all use that as an example today, so that we can have some real life stuff our people, our participants are dealing with? Let's use that as an example. Sharon, you want to start us off? How would you go about that one session?
If I'm understanding the question or how it's being presented, first I need the client to trust me. That's the first thing. So it's really important that, especially when, in particular, when it's the engagement has been done within the organization, that someone in the organization said, sure, I'm going to sponsor you so you can have an executive coach. The relationship is between myself and the coachee, regardless of who sponsors me. The relationship is between myself and the coachee. Ergo, they need to understand that they can trust me, that I will hold what they say to me, and it's sacred. Confidentiality is critical. And so I spend the first 3 or 4 sessions reminding them that this is a safe space. What they are sharing with me is going to be held confidential, and that they can trust that I'm going to keep my word. Now, the other part of that could be when they talk about trust, how do you bring up, if you're a DEI practitioner, how do you bring into the conversation things that could be, for lack of a better word, explosive in your organization? Because DEI it's a landmine, and so we're always walking gingerly across these landmines to try to get to the end result. And so I would say to them that continue being your authentic self, but knowing where the landmines are is another way of trusting that you're not going to fall into that pit or fall off your pedestal. I'm going to stop there because I want to give Ronald an opportunity.
And Ron, thanks so much, Sharon. Ron, before you move further, and I'm hoping I don't want to speak out of turn for the person that put this in here, because I know what Sharon said about that trust just doing this work and building trust, but also if you can speak to Ronald about the trust as the DEI person, how do you build trust and how do you work with someone in the coaching session about them building trust in the organization? And I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly for the person that put it in the chat. If not, you all will let me know. But if you can just speak a little bit on that, because Sharon just hit it out the park. I know about that. You know that because we're dealing with a lot of delicate things when we're working through DEI at an organization. So Ron, if you can go ahead and touch on that.
So helping the practitioner earn the trust of the ones they're serving.
Yeah, when you're in that coaching session, what does that look like?
Tough. That's tough, right? It's because there's no cookie cutter. There is no one way to solve this. I always tell people, think about how you have come to trust others and be what you need. In order for you to trust someone, what does it look like? What has to be in existence or in place for you to operate in the space of vulnerability because of the trust, right? And so as a consultant, when I walk into the room, I recognize that I'm going to have to build a rapport before anyone can trust me. And I have to be consistent. I have to show up. And sometimes me showing up means saying the things that no one's saying, the things that need to be said so that the work can get done. And so I'm sometimes labeled as the disruptor. I gladly put on the hat when I take my seat in the conference room because I know why I'm there, right? I'm not here to continue having this conversation go in a circle, right? And so being consistent, being transparent, and then holding them accountable. I have learned that if I hold you accountable and I'm following up and I'm remembering the things that we're talking about and I'm consistent, then the relationship can form, right? And when I think about feedback, when we provide feedback in organizations, as an employee, I hated the F word, right? I hated it. As soon as someone said feedback, I started cringing because a lot of times people were putting critiques or hostile assaults in there, right? And so a lot of my clients say, well, I don't have a relationship with this person, so I don't give them feedback. And I was like, no, feedback helps form the relationship. Because now, especially if I'm coming from a very objective place and I want to see you do better. And so by showing up in that space that I want you to do better, right? Like you said, I'm not coaching the problem, we're coaching the person. How can you show up the better than what you did yesterday? And if it was just a 0.5% of a change, then we're making progress, right? But as long as I am operating from a space of helping you to be better, then I find that trust is easier to be formed, especially if things that are said in the session remain in the session. I think that is key. Even if it's something that's said in the elevator while we're having a conversation on the way to lunch, I don't repeat it. I don't repeat it because if they weren't there, they don't need to be a part of it. And once they can see it, the trust, then they will rely more on you and operate from a space of vulnerability and open up, and then things happen. But it's tough.
It is. And I would just like to quickly add the other part of that trust and building that trust is oftentimes the DI person is operating as an internal consultant within the organization. So choices. So people don't like to be told what to do. You didn't like it when you were 3, and you don't like it when you're 30, 30 plus. So give them choices. And then that gives them the freedom to decide, am I going to go this way? Am I going to go that way? And then you can then say, I delivered. To Ronald's point, you asked me about a thing and I'm able to deliver a thing. And so you're trusting that I'm going to do that. And you're also trusting me to be consistent with how I'm standing in that space for you. So choices, we love it.
Well, I have to I want to continue with this part of the conversation because I'm really loving how you all are giving examples of how you work with people and work through different issues and topics. The first one that popped up, and that's near and dear to my heart, is working with someone on that confidence. When you're in that executive coaching and coaching session, especially with DEI practitioners, working with them on that confidence. Sharon, if you can talk to us a little bit about that, because I know you've worked with, and I'm not saying one above the other, but women have a hard time a lot of times with that confidence and being in that space. So, and men too, but I know a lot of women because I did a lot of those kind of conversations when I was in human resources, and then also going to the CDO space as a chief diversity officer. Talk to us a little bit about when you're having those kind of conversations with women in particular, with that confidence, because in DEI it is the disruptor, and everybody put that in the chat, Ronald, about being the disruptor. But that confidence, and that's hard sometimes, building that up, because sometimes you have to build your own self up. How do you talk about, or what's your approach with that in that session when you're working with people?
So they're all tough. I think I'm just gonna share.
Oh yeah.
And so one of the things that I try to remind the client, well, that I do remind the client, and I have to remind myself, I'm the leader that they've been waiting for, which is why they chose me, and I'm here. So then I follow that up with, stop looking for acceptance in the eyes of others. You will never find it. And I'm pretty sure I read that someplace and it just sticks in my mind for me. So I need to go in knowing that I am who I am and that I can do what I say I'm going to do. And that doesn't mean that some days I am probably going to miss the mark. I'm not a sports person, so I don't have any sports analogies. Can't share those with you. Sorry about that. No, I'm not sorry. But so if you do, then don't beat yourself up. And this is where female leaders come in at the most. It's in our DNA as women to be caregivers, to be caring. And so when you step into the arena as a DEI coach, you're not there to be the savior. You're not there to solve all the world's problems. You're there as a professional offering some insights, encouraging awareness, getting people to look at shifting their policies and procedures to be more inclusive. And when you do that, you may not be the person that they're going to like. That's okay too. You have your personal board of directors that everyone should have one, and your coach to go back to and say, you know what, I didn't land that conversation right. So when you do it the next time, you have something to build off of, you have something to learn from. Having executive presence when you're in the moment is not always easy. It's a practice. And you trust me, you may not have it when you start out, but if you practice it long enough, I remain confident that we can bring it out in ourselves when we're looking for it internally as opposed to looking for it externally. There's this thing called positive intelligence, emotional intelligence, positive intelligence. One of the saboteurs is judging. And we do a great job of judging ourselves, and then that increases the anxiety and puts us in that spiral. Stop judging yourself, ladies.
Definitely. Okay. I got to snap on that one. You got to stop judging yourself. And make sure everybody, you heard Sharon say it, get your board of directors. I have a board of directors, been in the business for years. I have a personal board of directors that I go to that hold me accountable. I can go to them for anything, questions, ideas, and they hold me accountable. Great point. I'm going to shift gears because Ronald had mentioned it a little while ago, and I want to go back to that about the confidentiality. On one of my questions that I sent to my panelists so they could be ready for all of these questions I was throwing at them. How do you handle confidential information when you're coaching someone, especially us DEI practitioners? We're dealing with some stuff. You know, we're dealing with the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, the balloons, but we're dealing with stuff day in, day out. How do you handle the confidential information when you're in a coaching session with someone, especially DEI practitioners and DEIA, DEIB? What do you do? How does that look with that confidentiality information?
Another tough one. So my background is in psychology, right? And so that's what drives a lot of my behavior, the code of ethics, right? The code of conduct, the things that we're supposed to do, especially within a therapy session. And so there's no difference within a coaching session. I am upfront with my clients and I say, hey, if there's anything that's going to bring harm to you or others, that may be information that I have to share. But I will tell you if I'm going to share something. You will never be caught by surprise. I will tell you, hey, I know you just shared this. This is why I have to share it. But for the most part, I haven't really come into a lot of those situations where I had to disclose certain information. We are in the DEI space. And so I tell people, once the session starts, I follow your lead. And sometimes they're saying, hey, listen, I need 10 minutes to get this off my chest. Don't judge me. Don't analyze me. Just let me get it out. And I say, go. And then at the end of the 10 minutes, I was like, now let's unpack some of that. And there's things that I am aware, right? There are cultural things that I'm aware that when people are saying it, they have different meanings.
Yeah.
And so I've been in a session as a client, and I had to give multiple definitions to something because person started typing. I was like, hey, wait, stop. This is what I meant by that, right? And so one thing about the confidentiality thing is that, which also goes back to the first thing of trust, the things that are said in the session, they are held sacred.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these things, especially with DEI practitioners, it's the lived experiences on top of the experiences of a practitioner. And so a lot of times the individual, I can't coach the practitioner because now I need to coach the person. And so we're going to push, okay, we're going to talk about the process and the program later. Let's talk about where that came from. Because if you can't figure out where it's coming from and treat the root, we can't treat the fruit. And so being able to focus in on, hey, this is heavy. What's stated in this session is going to stay in the session. And I will give examples of, hey, if you say something like this, I might have to reveal that. But once again, I'm going to inform my client before anything gets disclosed. And we'll talk about what that looks like, what may result from this, but I'm very transparent from outreach to outcomes. I'm going to inform my client what the process looks like and what my actions will be.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to send another question to everybody that's on, our participants. You can throw it in the chat. I kind of want to know, how many years have you been doing this work? If you're a DEI practitioner or consultant, have your own firm or business in an organization, I just kind of want to know where we are with folks who are part of the session today. How many years have you been doing it? I just want to get that real quick and just get a feel of how many years, so we can know. A lot of us are a little older because my gray is real, and we've been doing this a long time. So just wanted to know kind of where we are, 2 years, 1 year, 30 years, just letting us know where we are. So as we're having this conversation, we know where we can take it and what we can do with it on the journey, different capacities, last 5 years. Great. Thanks, Melissa. So just throw that in there because we're trying to make sure we're covering for people newer in the space, but also for us folks who have been long tenured in the space. I like to put it like that, who's been doing this work for such a long time. So we're going to give everybody time to, please know to put questions in the chat. Let me go through a few more questions I have, and then we're going to definitely take questions from our participants. So this is a two-way conversation that we're having today. So Sharon, you've worked with me before at different organizations where I've had the HR hat and the CDO hat and coming into my organizations and doing work with people. So talk to me about how you work with HR managers in their organization, especially if they're going to pay for it, the executive coaching for the person that is asking to have this done. So I know how you do it, but I'm gonna let you tell everybody how you do it because you've done it for me before when I was at other organizations and using you across different industries and different levels of people in the organization. Talk to us a little bit about how you do that thing you do with the HR and leaders that are paying for the coaching sessions.
So thanks for the question. So typically, it's the HR person that's reached out to ask, and in this case, it was you, for an external consultant. And again, go back to what I said earlier. I am very clear with in this case, the HR person would be the sponsor. I'm very clear that this relationship is going to be with the client. So I can tell you when we're scheduling them, and I can ask you how you want me to invoice you, but you cannot ask me anything about the session. If you want to know something about the session, then you need to ask your employee. And they have the right to not to tell. They don't have to share. So if you're not going to be comfortable having that person come into a coaching relationship where they're going to have a confidential relationship with their coach, then I'm not your coach. It is very, very important that there is not a Chinese wall, it's an ironclad wall that goes back to the whole trust. And it also goes to speaks to what Ronald said earlier. If there's something that's said that's going to be harmful to the organization, then yes, it needs to be disclosed. But yes, there'll be no surprise. And the other area that I'll add, the other caveat that I'll add to that is I let them know that, and then I encourage them to share it. And if depending on the situation, you have 24 hours to come forward with this. And if you don't, I will. It's that easy.
And that is important because I know I've used you a lot when I was at other organizations. And from the organizations I was a part of, it was important to me that we paid for coaching for staff because I was in HR and CDO, and we paid for it. And it was part of professional development. So if you are in an organization that has that benefit, use it. And for me, working with Sharon, with people in my organization, my leaders knew if it was someone in this coaching session, y'all are not in this. This is for this person's professional development. And the organization is paying for it. We're paying for them to do all other kind of training. And if this is what they need to help develop them in their roles in the organization and help them grow in the organization, even from the DEI practitioners, it was confidential. The organization paid for it. It was part of professional development. Sharon made sure I got the invoices. She made sure the person was meeting with her on a regular basis. We knew when it was starting and when it was ending, but it was never used as a way for, and I think you mentioned it earlier, Sharon, about we weren't using it as a part of coaching people out of the organization. We never used it for that. It was always professional development for people in our organizations when I had her come in and work with people in different parts of the business who wanted this and wanted to engage with a coach and an executive coach. So from middle managers, entry-level managers, all the way up to C-suite, that's how we would do this. And that was very important for me. Go ahead, Sharon.
I will add to that, Iris, that oftentimes what the HR person or the person's manager thinks they need, that individual may have a different perspective on it. So part of the coaching oftentimes include, for me anyway, I always ask the client on the front end, what are they looking to get out of it? And then having them have that conversation with their leader. And I've also asked the HR person, well, what is the expectation on their side? And if they, outside of the coaching relationship with me, have that conversation with the person that you're getting ready to send in for coaching so that you can be clear. A, you're not going to know what the relationship is going to look like inside the coaching bubble. B, if your expectation is different from their expectation, then the two of you need to have a conversation before they come to me so that there's no, well, I spent all this money and Sharon still is doing blah, blah, blah. That's not why Sharon was there. She didn't go to coaching for that. That's not what she was thinking she needed to work on in terms of her professional development. And I can say that I've had a client that at the end of the coaching is like, Sharon, I am not in the right job. I'm leaving this organization. Had nothing to do with it had everything to do with their decision making and on their timetable. They disclosed that to their leader. So it's very important. Be clear on expectations and outcomes at the onset.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks so very much. So we're going to shift a little bit here before we start taking questions from our participants today. One of the things I wanted you all to talk about, because I'm very adamant whenever someone comes to me and like, Iris, recommend a coach, I give them 3 people. I always give them 3 people. And I think that's important because you have to build a rapport with this person. You're going to be talking about some very personal things, some things you might not have expressed to anybody, wife, husband, children, partner, the dog, the cat. You haven't talked about it with anybody. So I always tell people when they come to me, I'm like, here's 3 people. Do an introduction, just like, what is it? The call, you call it, just to get to know you. Do that before engaging in an official coaching session with someone, because you're going to have to feel comfortable with this person you're talking to and having this deep conversation. And it's over multiple sessions. It's never one and done. I know I've had executive coaches my whole career and it was never one and done. It's always multiple sessions because sometimes you might need it for 3 months, 6 months, a year. You just never know what that looks like. I've had people who engaged with a coach that I recommended, and they were like, oh yeah, whatever. They did it 3 months. They came back and they were like, okay, how do I extend this to a year? And I was like, oh, okay, let's see what we can do. And that's how engaging it was for them. And that's how much it helped them develop, because they were in a leadership role where nobody was telling them things. They just were getting yes people all the time. So they really were working from this place of just being in a bubble. And the coach really helped them. The executive coach really helped them see themselves and how they were showing up and how to show up differently, in the work environment. So that's just my little asterisk. Always talk to 2 to 3 coaches to get that feel for who's right for you. That is vital. That is important. So Ronald, I'm gonna go with you. How do you measure outcomes? Because I know a lot of people who are the DEI practitioners were always told, what is the data? What is the action? What is the outcomes going to be of this when we do this? So as an executive coach working with someone, and especially a DEI practitioner, how do you measure outcomes in that engagement? How do you do that?
That will change given the person, the situation, the problem. I'm first an educator, right? And so I go back to my time in education. Did the individual leave me better than when they arrived? Are they thinking differently? Are they showing up differently? Not necessarily speaking differently, but are they having a greater impact? And are they thinking with intention and speaking with more intentionality, right? And so sometimes it's quantitative, sometimes it's qualitative. Were you able to complete the task that you weren't able to complete before you got here? Yeah, success, right? Are you now able to identify the things that's causing you to get stuck? Yep, you've identified them, you labeled them. Now, are you able to pivot around them? Are you able to turn those obstacles, right, into opportunities? What does this look like? Or are we still approaching this problem the same way when we first sat down to have the conversation? That's how I measure the impact. And it's relative to the person, because for the person over here, maybe it's process. Over here, maybe it's personal. Over here, maybe it's principle. And so there's a spectrum of things, and I think it all depends on why you were there and what it is that you actually want to accomplish by being there. And then at the end of the contract or the relationship, looking back to say, did I meet these objectives? Am I able to do the things that I said I wanted to do as a result of this? And am I better because of this?
Great, great, great. Sharon, before you say anything, we got a great question that just came in. I got to read this question from Carla. So how do you manage or coach a client that might not be ready for the conversation or ready for change? Part 1, who mentally might be blocked on making a certain change. And that's a great question. Thanks so very much for sending that question. You want me to read it again, Sharon? Because I want you to jump on that one first, because I see Sharon's head's tilted and she's thinking about it. And that is a great, great question. And I love that first part of it. How do you manage or coach a client that might not be ready for the conversation or ready to change? What they might have a block or something. How do you do that?
So coaching is an iterative relationship, the client and the coachee. And initially, I thought when I went through my training, quick story, they was like, oh, you can do the coaching on the phone. I'm like, how do you connect with somebody on the phone? That just wasn't resonating for me. And I will say, if we're in a coaching relationship and I'm doing most of the talking, something's not going on right, because I should be listening as opposed to talking. And I have a client, we're in the coaching, and then there's silence. And so I said, your voice, the silence is telling me something. So put some words to the silence. And when they started to speak again, they were being very emotional. So that tells me that I hit one of those pain spots. So if someone's not ready, then for me, I'm not going to try to badger them through it. I'm not going to take the position, you're going to just muscle through this. I had to pause and give them time to get ready to move forward. It's not about me making them, it's about me holding the space until they're ready. And it's even easier to do. Um, I wouldn't say it's easier, it's the same dynamic when we're doing it virtually, because now I'm looking at you. And I literally had a client say, you make me sick. And then they turned off their camera. I was like, okay. But I'll be here when you're ready to turn it back on. You have to, I give them grace. And I can say that over the coaching relationship, they learn how to give themselves grace. And I think that's important. So that was the first half of the question. What was the second half?
Let me pull it back up so I can get it. Okay. When, who mentally might be blocked on making a certain change.
Then it will be the same part of that. If we can get to the peel back the layers on what's blocking them, then we can move forward. And sometimes we can. Sometimes it takes a couple of sessions to get there, because it's important for me to go back and help them revisit where we started to when we got to the like, now I'm emotionally distraught and I can't talk to you anymore. We're going to go back and revisit that as oftentimes as we need to, so that they can then move themselves forward.
Great, 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 great. And I'm gonna let you chime in on that too, Ronald, in a minute. I just wanted to share. I know when I was working executive coach years ago, and I had a habit of just talking about problems and situations, what was going on, and not about me. And she stopped me and she said, "Well, when are we going to talk about you?" And it was like the light bulb went off. I really, really just couldn't even wrap my head around. I didn't even realize I was doing that. And she goes, "No, Iris, this session is about you. It's time to talk about you in these things, in this situation and these issues, not just the issues and problems and putting it like it was a third person, like it was, I was talking to the third person." She said, "No, no, no, we're going to stop. We're going to make this about you and we're going to address this. Why are you doing that?" You know, she kept digging down, digging down, digging down. And like Sharon said, I got mad at her because I was like, "But I don't want to talk about that." And she was like, "Well, we're going to talk about it." You know, and she kept peeling those layers back till I felt comfortable with going, "Okay, yeah, I need to address this." And thank you so much, Carla. Carla put in the chat. Thank you, Sharon, about that. Ronald, how do you handle that when you have that person that's just like, "Okay, I know we're talking about this. This is great. We're having a whole bunch of great conversations, but I don't want to do no change. Ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. Why are you trying to make me go there?" How do you tackle that? How do you tackle that? Mr. Therapist background.
Yeah. So I asked some questions around. So what's the hesitation? What's the reservation?
Mhm.
What's going to happen as a result of you moving in this direction? Then I offer, once again, give you the option or
Yeah.
the choice.
Mhm.
What's it look like to stay right here?
Mhm.
You've identified that this is not where you want to be.
Mhm.
What will you lose by not moving your feet? And if I'm in person, then I'll have them write it on the board. This ain't my session. Write it out. And so I'm writing it and I'm reading it.
Yep.
Okay, now let's go to another wall. Now let's look at everything you're going to gain by getting there. And I have them writing it out. And I say, now tell me where you want to be. Because one, you got to decide. Remove, delete, side, kill off. So I'm deleting and I'm removing and I'm killing off any other option. So if I decide that I want to stay here, then where I want to be is no longer an option. And if I decide that this is where I want to go, right? The things that I've identified, the reason why I'm in this session, if this is what I want, then I have to kill off the option of me staying where I am. And then I say, hey, I understand this is a lot, but now I'm going to give you homework. I'll give you a week. Process. Think this over and continue to add to this list. What am I going to lose by staying here? And then what am I going to gain by going there? And then in a week, we're going to come back. You let me know your decision, and then we'll keep it moving. At no way or no point of the I was going to say point of the service. At no point of the session am I going to say, "Oh no, this is where we're going." You decide, right? This is your session.
Mhm.
I'm along for the journey. I'm driving the car, and then anytime you want to get out, I will pull over, I will open the door, and I will allow you to exit. Now, what I do say is, now once you make the decision to go, by any means necessary, this is where we're going. And I'm going to hold you accountable and remind you of what you said and what you wanted. And I'll take a picture of the wall that they said of the things that they're going to gain, and I'll randomly send it to them. Hey, hope your day's going well. Just wanted to send you a reminder of the things that I'm looking forward to you gaining as a part of this journey. And I constantly remind them. And then even if we're in person, I'll have them touch it at times when they start to hesitate. Touch the things that you're looking for, right? Let go of the things behind you, touch this, and let's keep it moving. But to Sharon's point, they have to want it for themselves.
Yeah.
I can't want it more for them than they want it for themselves. And if they recognize, you know what, this ain't the time and it ain't my turn, I'm cool with that. Call me when you're ready, but
Definitely.
not a second before, right? Because it's time to do the work, right? Don't call me to be a friend, right? I have enough of those. Call me when you're ready to do the work.
Do the work. Do the work. Thanks so much,
It
Ronald. You and
is that.
Sharon are just
Work.
sharing some great nuggets, sharing some great nuggets today.
It's definitely work. It's not an easy journey, and it's work.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to give the audience, our participants, please start putting some questions. You can do it in the chat or the Q&A. Put some questions in here. Before we wrap up our hour, I want to make sure I give you all time and space to ask some deep questions that might be on your mind, top of mind. You got two great experts here that are executive coaches, one that also has a therapist background, and then you have somebody who's talking to you that has had executive coaches her entire career. And the other point I wanted to make on that too, so feel free to start putting in questions. I have a list of questions, so I could definitely keep going on. But one of the things I wanted to make a note of too is I've had coaches in different part of my career for different things too. So it's not like you get one and done and you're like, oh, I've had a coach and I'm gone. You get to different places in your career, different spaces, and you're like, what am I going to do next? Or where do I want to go? Or this thing is going on, or this thing is happening. And I'm an extrovert to the 15th power, as you can tell. And even for me, I'm like, okay, let me step back, and I need a coach to come help me through this situation, time, point in my life, point in my career. What do I want to do next? Where do I want to go? Something pressing on my mind. And it's just great to be able to reach out, have that relationship, work with that person to get that clarity. Also, I think it's a really great clarity thing to have an executive coach and working with a coach for you. And it's personal. It is personal. We all need that support, especially in the spaces where we're working. We need it for us. It helps strengthen our armor. And I'm going to just lay that one out there like that, because I've been in DEI for years. It strengthens your armor is to have that coach and have that person to support you and lift you up and take you where you want to go and to do the things you want to do. So feel free, drop some pressing questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and I'll make sure I jump on them and look at them. But what I want to do right now, I have another question I'm going to ask both Sharon and Ronald. So when we talk about coaching, this is a real thing. You get certified in this. And I remember when Sharon told me about how she had to get certified in this, and I was like, what? So this isn't something you do lightly. This isn't something you decide like, oh, tomorrow I'm going to do this, and in 3 months I'm going to be this. This is a commitment. You have to go get training. You have to work with clients to build up so you can get the credit and the hours. So you all are dedicated to this profession and getting, where you are now today, doing the thing that you do to do the right thing that you're doing. Talk to me, if you can, just a little bit. What are some of the methodologies that you use? You don't have to go into detail, but I know everybody has different type of methodologies or tools or different things like that. And I know from my previous experiences with working with executive coaches, I got a few assessments done on myself so that I could get myself out of myself. And it was really eye-opening. It was really eye-opening because I had never done them. I had been on the end where I made people get it, or I brought a consultant in and they did it with people. But when I had it done on myself and I stopped, and the coach I was working with said, oh, I need you to do this because you need to see where you need growth, where you're strong, but also where you needed growth. So for me, it was very eye-opening to do that third-party assessment to really see myself from a different perspective. And she gave me feedback from that assessment. And I was like, I know me now, and I know how much I don't like details because I love looking at the big strategy and the big picture, and I can see it in Technicolor. And then somebody goes, well, you need to put, you might need to put film in the camera if you really want to shoot this for the film. You need to put it in. I'm like, well, can't somebody else do that? So for me, that was a learning experience and using that assessment. Talk to me about what kind of just methodologies or tools, just briefly, if you want to talk about that, each one of you. Sharon?
So it varies. Some people at the senior level, they've been assessed up to the yin yang and they're not looking for another assessment. And so they just want to dive in. At the entry level, they probably do need an assessment. Mid-level or the director level, a 360 assessment will be great. To Ron, as I'm listening to Ron, it's like write it down. It's like, yeah, that sounds like me. They'll say something in the session, it's like write that down. Then it's like write it down again, and then I make them say it out loud so that they can hear themselves saying it, and that's when it becomes real. Or depending what it is, I've had clients that are visual, and I give them the assignment is when you do X, Y, and Z, find something that's going to be visual for you. If it's putting coins in a jar, or if it's making check marks here, so when we come back, we can check in on that. So some people are like, well, that sounds childish. You know what? There's a child in each and every adult that's walking the planet. So let's just remember that. And if it was working for you when you were 4, it's probably going to work for you again at 20. Don't discount it. Now it's just, and so someone's like, well, can I get a drink? I'm like, look, if you want to be drunk at work, go for it. But I don't recommend that if you want to keep your job. Okay. You want to do that on the weekend, then that could be okay. But you want something to remind them. But to your point, the methodology depends on what the client is bringing to the table. There is no one set format. And so I have a toolkit that I can reach into and I just pull out of it based on what's been put in front of me in terms of the client's needs.
Before you answer that, Ronald, thanks so much, Sharon. Before you answer that, I got a great question that jumped in on the chat. Thank you so very much, Susan. For those who coach and do DEI, are you certified in both, or often DEI or consulting includes coaching?
So go ahead, Ronald.
I would say it depends on your experience, right? I've been a part of certifications for both. I sometimes do training and facilitating for the certification for those things. And so it depends on where you're getting the certification from. I will say that. And then it depends on the work that is required to keep the certification. Sometimes people get the one and done and then they don't do anything with it, and so it's really not helpful. It's like getting a book and putting it on the shelf. I didn't read it, but it looks good. I got the certification. What are you doing with it? Yeah, what are you doing with it, right? All this time that was devoted to this and you're not using it, right? So I say certification and practice, education and practice. It could be a combination of the aforementioned, but it all requires effort on both ends.
Great. We got another question that just jumped in on the Q&A, and I love this because it's so interactive. Thank you all so much for just being participants, active participants in this session today. So what is the best way for someone that is interested in having a coach and that is starting their career in the field of DEI?
So I'm going to say to Iris's point, if you don't know, well, we're going to start here. Let's start in this space. You know, Iris, you logged into this webinar, reach out to her and say, hey, I'm interested in having a coach. And what did she say? Have interview more than one person. So because everyone is not a good fit for everyone. So have at least 3 people in your source that you, and it's an interview. So I don't get to think that just because Iris sent me someone that wanted to speak to me about coaching that, oh yeah, I got me a new client. I might not be the right person for them. Or someone would say, yes, Sharon, you are the right person. Like, no, I'm not. No, no. I can tell you right now, we're not going to work well together. I'm not the best fit for you. But let me refer you to a couple of other people, and I think that they may be a better fit for you. So it depends on what your need is.
Great. Thanks so much. Ronald, I want to go back to you. We're almost at time, but I just want you to mention any methodologies, tools you like to use in your toolkit when you're doing coaching.
I enjoy, once again, depending on the level, right? If to Sharon's point, if they have so many years of experience and are sitting at a certain level, they have probably had just about any assessment that HR can pay for. Especially if it's shiny and new, HR is going to be the first one to grab it, and then it's like, hey, this is what we did, and it's like, oh, okay, great. But assessments or feedback, 360 feedback is very important. One aspect that I'll also bring into executive coaching And a lot of individuals look at me like I'm crazy until they do it. I get feedback. I get them to get feedback, but not from individuals within their company, individuals within their inner circle.
Yeah.
And the thing that I always tell people is, show me who's holding your ladder and I'll tell you how high you can go. And so depending on who you have that's around you, right? Like if you have individuals that are feeding this maladaptive behavior and you're wondering why it's showing up at work, it's because you don't have anyone around you or sitting on your board of directors that's going to check you. And so I don't want to hear from your manager right now. Let me hear from the people that you spend the most time with. And so sometimes I pull that out and it throws them for a loop. And it's like, I know what this person's going to say. Let me just tell them to send a form. Right. And then we'll talk about it. I also use books. There's some books that I will recommend and we will go through the book together. It's like, no, where did you see yourself in this chapter? What did you identify? And let's really ponder on these things. And so different types of conversation. Sometimes we do role play. Let me talk to me about this problem. And then they will say, well, this is what I would say. You would say it like that? Like this, you like that? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, let's stay here for a second because this is a problem. And now they're like, oh. And so a lot of the things, it's small things, small nuances that they're not aware of, right? In their blind spots that sometimes impact the reason why they are in the coaching session to begin with. And so once again, it depends on the person. What I will pull out the bag to be used at that time.
Well, we are at time, and I just want to thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Ronald, for being here with me and all the participants and everybody that showed up today and showed out today and just putting in the chat and all those different things. I think there was one more question. Many times nonprofit boards ask me to coach their executive as part of my consulting contract. Do you recommend formally getting certified or referring that part of the consulting to a certified executive coach? I can tell you right now, Susan, I've always had a lot of clients that ask me, even in executive recruiting, I always refer them to people who are certified. That's just me. I'll let Sharon and Ronald, before Amber, is it time to sign off? I don't want to go over our time. If they could just answer those last two questions, that last question, two of them.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So about the, when you're doing that coaching, where you're doing the consulting for nonprofit boards, do you recommend formally getting certified or referring that part of the consulting to a certified executive coach?
My recommendation would be this: if coaching is a space that you want to be in, then go and put in the work and get certified. And if you're not able to do it in the mind for that particular client, then feel comfortable referring them to someone else. And if it's a financial perspective, then you can work out the finances because you get a referral fee or et cetera, et cetera. But coaching is not it's a conversation that has some depth to it. And if you're not confident in that space, then I would recommend, yes, invest in the training. It's worthwhile. Ronald.
And Ronald, you and I, we're partnering on something, a client who wanted me to do some work for them. And I told the client, let me reach out to the certified person who can do this work and have him to be a part of it with me. I am not a certified coach. I have years of experience in HR, years of experience in diversity, equity, and inclusion work, but I'm not certified. And for that part of the work, I said, let me reach out to Ronald, see if I can put him on the contract with me to do that part of it. And I just personally feel more comfortable doing that. I know for me when I'm working with clients. So.
And the universe will support you. If it's a financial thing, the universe will circle back around and it will support you in that choice.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Ronald. Thank you to all the participants that were on today. This was a great, robust conversation. 100% we'll be sending Amber our information so she can share with the participants our contact. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn. All of us are on LinkedIn as well, and we will get back to you. Loved being a part of this. Again, if you're not certified with the Society for Diversity, get it. I have been for years. I love it. It's a great credential that I have that people really respect when I'm out here in the field doing work just outside of executive recruiting. You know, a lot of people reach out to me because they see that certification. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day. And again, thank you, Sharon, Ronald, and everybody that participated with us today. Thank you so very much. Have a good one.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.